What's up, everybody? I'm Blessed and Free. Welcome back to another episode of DOC TV. So as you can see, I got another interview for the channel. And the reason why I like doing interviews for the channel is because the way people did their time, everybody's experience with going to prison and jail is different. Making this whole YouTube channel, I've met a lot of cool people. I've met a lot of crazy people. But today I got somebody that's cool on the channel, and they're going to give you a description of what it was like for them going to prison, being a felon after prison, and even before prison. So why don't you tell these people what your name is and where you're from, man?
My name is Jamie Heim. I'm from Northern California. I now reside in Washington State.
Okay, cool, man. So you've been in the California system, and I mean, I hear crazy shit about California prisons and all that. So how was your like childhood growing up? Like, where do you feel like, or what made you take that kind of road in life versus, just doing the right thing?
My parents were drug addicts and drug dealers.
Okay.
So I was raised around a lot of violence. A lot of my family members were one percenters. And so it was nothing to be around drugs or violence, see somebody get hurt as a young kid. And so it just kind of was the norm for me growing up to see, to deal with everything with your hands and not necessarily your mouth.
Right. So the violence is really what kind of grabbed a hold of you in the beginning, huh?
Yes, sir.
When did you first start getting arrested and ending up in the criminal justice system? How did that all go down?
I got arrested for the first time when I was 9 years old.
Damn.
Yeah, me and my homeboys from the hood, we'd ride around on our bicycles. And where I grew up was 80% Hispanics, and they were all gangbangers. They all had lowriders. They had nice shiny wheels and stuff. And so we wanted all the bow stem caps to put on our bike tires. So we'd roll around and start stealing shit. And then one time while I was stealing some shit out of the car, I took off on my bike and I hit a car that was parked, and the dude caught me. And so he called the cops. And that was my first introduction to going to juvie, was at 9. And from there, it was about at least once a year I was locked up until I was 14. When I was 14, my parents had left me and my sister home alone. My sister was 5 years younger than me. They had a whole bunch of dope in the house. 4 gangbangers showed up across my front lawn with guns and broke into my sister's room to try to steal the dope. I heard her screaming. I grabbed my stepdad's shotgun and I ran into her room to see what was going on. And homeboy was climbing through the window, and so I blasted his ass. And it wasn't necessarily that got me into the system, because of the fact that I shot him, I was protecting my home. Right. I knew that if I didn't go, there was 4 of them. I knew that if I didn't do something with the other 3, I was going to get my ass kicked when my parents got home. So I ran out the front door, running down the street with a shotgun, firing at these guys. And that's what got me assault in the first degree with great bodily injury. Gave me 4 years in the YA.
Okay, so and for the people that don't know, California YA is a youthful offender prison. The same, no different than what's in Florida. Here they call them JIT camps.
Exactly. It's the same kind of shit. It sounds like the same kind of things go down.
Yeah.
It's pretty wild. There's no structure, really.
Right. So when you shot the dude, did you get arrested that night, or how did that all go down?
No, actually, that's the funny thing. It took about a week for them to do the investigation. At first, I didn't admit to running down the street after these guys. I kind of played it off like I shot homeboy, and then just put the gun down and called the cops, which I actually didn't do. I called my parents first after I ran down the street. Some of the neighbors had seen what was going on, heard the gunshots, obviously, because it was a 410 shotgun. So once they started questioning people in my neighborhood, the truth had come out. And at that point, I just felt like I had to tell the truth. Things wouldn't have went down the way they did, but I would have got my ass kicked when my parents got home. So I had to do what I had to do.
So would you say that when you shot the dude, when he came into your house, was it more like you shot him because you were worried, like you were saying your parents are going to beat your ass? Or were you just like, this motherfucker's breaking in my house, like I'm going to show him what time it is?
Well, it was a little bit of both, to be honest with you. At first, I seen somebody run across our front lawn, and this is at like noon during the day, in broad daylight. 4 guys are running across the lawn with their handguns out. And so at first I was like, man, I got to see what's up. Once I heard my little sister scream, that changed everything for me. Her and I were pretty much all we had growing up, and so I was like a father figure to her. And once I heard her scream, it was like everything went out the window. I seen dude halfway through her window, and I had to.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I get what you're saying, man. I mean, I'd probably do the same thing, honestly.
Yeah.
All right. So a week later, you get arrested. And then you go to, did you go to juvenile detention at that point?
Yeah, I went to juvenile detention and had to sit through 3 hearings before they actually gave me my fate. Okay. Originally what they did, they gave me a gang enhancement. I wasn't an actual gang member, but I was affiliated. Where I came from in California, you didn't have to necessarily be jumped in to be one of them. If you're from their neighborhood, that's all it takes.
Yeah.
And little did I know that did hurt me, but it actually saved my life once I got into the system. Being from the hood and being able to tell some of because once I got to YA, I mean, literally there was probably 2,000 individuals in the camp that I was in, and only 7 or 8 of us were white. So we didn't have no numbers.
Yeah.
And I was used to growing up with were the Hispanics. And so I just kind of stuck with those guys. After a little while, I had to go through some shit to get to that point. But
so what was the shit that you had to go through? Like when you first got in there? I know they have like test of heart, kind of just seeing where you're at, applying some pressure to you to see if you're going to, rock out or you're going to fold. So how did your TOH go down?
Well, first they sent me to a place called Camp Roberts. The way the YAA works in Cali is you get sent to a camp depending on whether you're from Southern or Northern California. So because I was from Northern, I got sent down by Fresno to Camp Roberts at the time, and that was for classification. Once I went through classification for about 4 weeks, then they sent me to Paso Robles, and it was called Camp Paso, and that was my final home. Once I got there, I had already heard about the TOHs, and I was kind of told that what they would do is they would line up 5 or 6 guys. You would go heads up for a minute with each one of them and just keep going until you run through the line, win or lose. So I kind of prepared myself mentally for that. Once I got there, though, that was not how it went down. They found out what my charges were first thing, and they had asked me, and I told them exactly what time it was. And then they wanted to test me because they thought I was living that life because I'd shot somebody.
Right.
Instead of being 1-on-1 times 5, it was 5 on me. And they did that to me for about 4 or 5 days in a row, just beat the piss out of me. I've always been one of those guys, though, that I've never been scared of anybody. So I kind of get excited when there's more than one dude when I'm brawling, to be honest with you. And so seeing them coming at me, I knew what was up. I just started swinging at the biggest dude. But once they circled me, I mean, there was nothing I could really do. I ended up on the ground, kind of just protecting myself. After about the 4th or 5th day of getting smashed, the SAs found out where I was from. I was from the neighborhood, and they actually went back and revenged for me on these guys. They beat the piss out of all these. It was actually Southerners that were testing me. But because I was from the Northerners, you can't really go fucking with a Northerner. It's going to cause a gang war. And so those guys beat the piss out of them for me. Once that happened, it kind of changed things for me. There was no more issues with me with the Southerners.
Like, I'm glad you brought this up because a lot of people that have been to prison, one, they either lie about have they ever got their ass kicked. Everybody that's been to prison won every fight, or well, they're on their way to prison and they say, man, a bitch tries me and I'm going to rock out. Well, when 5 dudes rush you in a cell, there's not much you can do. I'm a bigger dude. You're a bigger dude, but you can be laid down just as easy as a smaller dude. And I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, I'm 6'6" and 240, man, and it don't fucking matter when there's 5.
My point exactly.
There's 5 dudes swinging from behind and front and side of you. What are you going to do? You can try to bob and weave and get out of the way, but it ain't going to last very long.
Yeah,
and
no doubt.
Once it happens, you kind of find yourself mentally trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together. About the last day or 2 that they had smashed me, I kind of got the attitude like, fuck it, you know what? They're going to beat my ass anyway. I'm going to give it everything I had. And I was rocking out, man. I was swinging. kicking legs, whatever I had. Eventually I went down and got my ass kicked, but I wasn't going to go out without a fight because I knew what was going to happen if I fucking did, you know?
Yeah, no doubt. So you were riding with the Northern car?
Yeah.
Okay. And so after the essays went and handed you the business that jumped you, how did your time go at that point? Like, was it smoother or?
Yes and no. It was smoother as far as dealing with the opposite opponents, the Southerners, but now it was kind of like they did me a favor I owed them.
Yeah.
And so even though I wasn't a member, because they had put in work for me and I was from the hood, they expected the same for me. And so, I had to do some shit that I wasn't proud of.
Yeah.
And I'm one of those guys that have never I'm 0 or 100, nowhere in between. And so if I've got to get violent, I'm going to get freaking violent. You know what I mean? And it kind of made a name for me. Basically what they wanted me to do was I was the guy that made the weapons and held the weapons until they needed to put in work. And so I would go around the compound, finding plexiglass, metal, anything I could, even combs, if that was all that there was, shave that shit down, make a point on it. And when the homeboys needed it, I was the hold down man for that shit.
Yeah.
There was a couple times. I mean, back then, the $150 thing wasn't so big like it is now. It was more of like the lock in the sock kind of deal. I got cracked a couple times with a lock.
Yeah.
And got hit with an ice pick one time, and it is what it is. It's a violent fucking place. There's a lot of these channels. That's what kind of drew me to your channel, man. You don't glorify the shit. A lot of these other guys do. And people aren't living that life. They think they're living that life until something happens and they got to fucking actually be violent or be that guy. And then they shoot somebody and then they're fucking sorry they did it. If you're about that life, be about that life. I'm trying to change my life around. It ain't easy though, man. Like you were asking me, being a felon, once I got out, they tried it. They cut my hat. What they did was they sentenced me to 4 years. They had me do 2 years. They were going to send me to a treatment program. I started using drugs in the 3rd grade with my parents, man. So they tried to send me to treatment. I made it about 2 months and it wasn't working. And so I got kicked out of the program. Once I did that, it forfeited my halftime. They sent me back. I had to do the other 2 years.
Man.
Once I got out, I had to go see a DOC.
So one question, how did you get kicked out of the drug program? Did you use or did you just not follow the rules?
I wasn't following the rules. I was fighting. I still was having the mentality of where I just came from. If somebody steps up, looks at me sideways, I was throwing hands. I mean, it's just always how I've been until this point in my life now. And so this dude had kind of tested me one day. And I was trying to mind my P's and Q's. I've always been that guy. I'm not the guy that starts shit. Right. I'm the guy that you start shit with me, I'm going to handle it or whatever. And so I was minding my business, and the motherfucker came up, pushed me from behind. And so once he did that, I actually suplexed his ass against a brick wall, and it knocked his ass out from hitting his head. And so they were talking about actually pressing more charges, but I had witnesses that said the dude started the thing, but it got me removed from the program.
Yeah.
And they were talking shit, and like, you can't be doing that. And I was like, the motherfucker put his hands on me first, man. I don't let nobody touch me, And so it hella sucked, man, because with my parents being the way they were, now my sister was stuck there by herself. And we were raised in, physical, sexual, and mental abuse growing up. And so it left her there. And that's what made the time hard for me, to be honest with you. I was used to the violence. Were
your parents keeping in contact with you when you were in prison? No.
Me and a homie were talking about that not too long ago when I was locked up in county. I did this for my parents and my sister, and they basically threw me under the bus. When I went to court and to trial, they denied having the drugs. They denied me doing it for them. They even denied that it was their gun because of the lifestyle that they were living. And so I got more time, I think, because of the way they just kind of tossed me. I never knew my real dad. He was always in and out of prison my whole life. Yeah. And so I actually, it's really weird. At like 4 or 5 years old, I just kind of had this intuition that I was going to end up in prison. You know what I mean?
I did too, man. It's crazy. And yeah. What's even crazier, man, is the people that I talk to, like you or other interviews that I've done, or just people that I know in general, man, there's always this common denominator with our lives. And that's either our mom or our dad wasn't there, or they were there, but they were on drugs, or there was violence, or there was abuse. And that's, I like to speak on that because that's a big problem. And the prison population is not going to stop populating if the issue start at home. And like you said, with parenting and stuff like that. And it just sucks because, a child doesn't pick, what home and what parent it goes to. And sometimes you get a shit end of the deal.
I'm thankful, though, to be honest with you, brother, that I went through what I went through because I had horrible parents, man, but I'm honestly a good father. I've actually got 6 kids, but 4 young ones at home, and they're my life, man. When I got locked this last time for the 150 days, that was the hardest. I've always done really well locked up. Like I sleep better when I'm locked up. I'm comfortable. I'm at peace. You know what I mean? It's crazy. I hate it. I feel institutionalized. But this last time, man, it was hard. Like, I'm not going to bullshit you. I cried every day in my cell. And because of my charges, they housed me alone, which made it easier to be able to go through those emotions. You know what I mean? But
yeah, definitely. So all right, so you go back to the juvenile prison because you got kicked out of the drug program. So what happened at that point? How much time did you have left?
I had 2 years left on my sentence.
Okay.
I did about little over 18 months of that, and then had the rest of probation. My grandparents actually were a huge influence on my life musically, and they were more parents to me than my parents were. So they actually hired an attorney and went back and appealed my case and was able to get me out earlier than the actual doing the full 2 years. Back then, this was like in 88, 89, and so you didn't really have parole as a juvenile. You did have probation, but it was just way different. So I did a little over 18 months. We went back to court. They decided that what the judge basically told me was because of my lifestyle, the way my parents were living, and the people I was hanging out with. And as many times he's like, I don't get a lot of kids at 9 years old that are coming into the system. He goes, you need to get your ass out of California when I release you, because if you don't, you're going to end up either being a lifer or you're going to get killed. And I knew that he was, being truthful with me.
Yeah.
At this point, my mom and my sister had already moved to Washington State and kind of just left me behind. And so I took what that judge had to say very seriously. I went and stayed a couple of days with my grandparents when I got out. And then I was just like, I knew that dudes were looking for me. And so I just packed my shit one day and I just fucking bounced. Didn't tell nobody. I just fucking left. Came to Washington, and you think that you can go somewhere else to get away from your issues, but running isn't the answer. It's internally. You got to fix yourself internally. It don't matter where the fuck you go. You know what I mean? And
they call that a geographical cure.
Yeah.
And that shit don't work.
I got a buddy going through that right now, and I'm telling him, it's like, dude, you got to fix you. It don't matter where the fuck you go.
Yeah. So when you moved to Washington, now you were saying like you take yourself where you go. So what became the issue then in Washington for you?
Well, I got my GED when I was locked down, and so when I got out, I thought, I'm going to change my life around. I enrolled into college. I started going. My first day at college, California is just its own beast, man. The way people are, the way things are, it's an aggressive way of living down there. And I just kind of expected that everywhere was that way.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so I got to Washington thinking that shit was going to be just like it was down there, and I had to carry myself the same way. I get into the college, I go to the bookstore, get my shit to go to class, and I step in the bathroom, and some dude that's about my age is like, I'm dressing like I'm a Hispanic. I was raised around with all the Mexicans or whatever and the gangbangers. And so that's kind of how I was dressed. And homeboy started talking shit to me in the bathroom. And I didn't even like think about what he said. I just snapped and fucking hit him with a 2-piece, and it just kind of started from there. It was like I started realizing, man, it's me. It's not, who gives a shit what he says? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It just kept going from there. The drugs, I got into drugs and alcohol super heavy. And you know how that is, man. Once you start going down that road, fucking with meth and everything else.
Yeah.
My mind wasn't right.
Like, what do you think it was in your life that made you say, like, I don't want to live this way anymore? Like, I just want to be a regular dude and kind of just lay back and chill.
This last time being locked up, I have a daughter. I have two daughters that are a little older. One of them is 14. She doesn't live too far from where I live. And she's seen me her whole life going in and out of county, in and out of county, in and out of treatment. But we have a really good relationship. And finally, one day when I had called her from county, she was just a mess in tears. And her and her mom don't have a super close relationship like her and I do. And I realized, like, I've got this opportunity and this special relationship with this kid that looks at me like I'm a fucking god.
Yeah.
I'm wasting it living my own life, and it just kind of, I started thinking about when my dad bailed on me and what my mom did. And I couldn't repeat that fucking cycle no more, man. I got two sons now that are almost 2 years old, and I got to set some sort of foundation for them to let them see that the way I've been living my life is not normal. That's
yeah,
not
man.
for them. You know what I mean?
Yep. I respect that, man, because a lot of people don't do that. They just keep doing, we call it the life installment plan, in and out, in and out, in and out, in and out. What do you think is the hardest thing you've come across being a felon, been to prison, been to jail? Like, as far as employment goes, places to live, like, what kind of troubles have you run across in your life from that?
Well, I've got a jacket on now, so you can't tell, but I'm almost sleeved on both arms, so the way people look at me.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily care what people think of me, but I noticed that because of the tattoos, regardless if I got them inside or not, people just automatically assume you're a felon and a bad person,
Yeah.
Because of the fact I was a mechanic for like 16 years at a GM dealership. And like we had talked, I gave that up and went to follow my dream as a musician. Because of the fact that I am a self-employed musician, the felony thing doesn't really fuck with me, except for the fact I can't leave the US anymore. When I was playing with some big artists for a while, I was touring around the world, and now I can't. That's the hardest thing for me, is I can't go to Mexico or to Germany or any of those places again. I've been to Iraq, play for the soldiers. I can't do any of those things anymore. Right now, I can't even leave where the fuck I am for a year because of DOC. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So you're you said you're a musician. So what do you do, man? What do you play?
I've been playing drums since I was 4 years old. I'm actually I didn't know my dad or my grandfather from him, but I'm a third generation drummer.
Yeah, that's cool, man.
Yeah, my grandfather was a big ass drummer for the Dorsey brothers back in the 40s. And so even though I didn't know them, just at a young age, I was hitting pots and pans, and I knew that was another thing that I wanted to do. And so it just got to the point where I was working 40, 50 hours a week, fixing cars and shit, and then playing 4 or 5 nights a week around town playing music. And I hated fucking working on cars, but I loved playing my drums. And so I finally at one point just said, I'm not doing this shit anymore, man. Why live your life doing something you hate? Because then it truly is a job. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
So I told my daughters what I was going to do, and I just packed my shit and moved to fucking Nashville for a few years. Again, thinking that running away would change things, and it didn't.
Yeah.
I had a lot of success down there, but to be honest with you, playing with some of the biggest country artists in the world, I fucked it up because of my drug use.
Yeah. That sucks.
For me, at that point, I had broke my back in a motorcycle. I was running from the cops on a crotch rocket at 130 on wet pavement, lost control, hit a tree, and broke my back. And I've had a bunch of surgeries. And so I got hooked on fucking pain pills. You know what I mean? I worked my way from Vicodins all the way up to methadone. And then I was hooked on the methadone for about 5 years. And
yeah,
I didn't have to.
That's the same thing that happened to me. I was ejected from a car, broke my sternum, and just exactly like what you went through, man. Like, the doctor gives it to me, I must need it. And then eventually you're just taking everything. And
he was giving me all I needed. I never had to go on the streets and look for it. He was just handing the shit to me. And so it got to the point, though, when I was on the road, I'd be playing in front of 30, 40,000 people, and I would be throwing up in a bucket next to my drum set because I was going through withdrawals because I would take my pills too fast.
Man, bro. So
And
if you had, sorry about that. If you had if you could say anything to the younger generation or kids that are in trouble or maybe going down the same road that me and you went down, what would you say?
You know, I do a lot of volunteering now at schools, giving free drum lessons to kids that come from troubled homes like we did. And I tell them all the time, you know, I choose your own music. If you like rap music and that's what you're into, there's nothing wrong with that, but use your fucking head and don't take the words seriously, because a lot of that shit's just entertainment. They're not really living that life. And if that's the path you're going to follow, you're going to regret it someday. I can guarantee you just what I went through. And it could have been a lot worse.
Yeah.
I could have spent a lot more time than I actually did. And, you know, live your life, man. You only get one life. Stay away from the drugs and alcohol. Find a passion, something that you're passionate about, and give yourself 100% of your time and effort into that, because we all need that. You know what I mean? Something to keep us focused and healthy.
Yeah, man. Well, hey, I just wanted to thank you for coming on the show to do an interview, man. It was good meeting you. We'll stay in touch. And with that, it's DOC TV, and we're out.